Hello, scallywags and scoundrels. Welcome to episode 53 of the Squadron. And yes, here there be meta talk. Yar.
Yar.
Welcome to our episode on tournament preparedness and how you, yes, you, can better prepare for your large-scale events.
And as we're getting into the more competitive events that are starting to come up, planetary qualifiers now being announced all over the place. We don't know the kits yet. We'll have an episode where we go over those and what we think of those. Yep. But right now, I don't know about you guys, but I've signed up for the Australian planetary qualifiers. There is only one in Australia.
There is.
There is Uno, and we are flying down to Melbourne for it. Both of us are.
We'll see you there.
And
come say hi.
Sorry, people from Melbourne, that you're not going to win anymore.
Ooh, bold claim.
I just like it's rough. It's rough. Like you should have bought all the tickets before we did.
Well, we are very excited to see you. If we see you on the field of battle, lol. But if we don't, and you see us, I give you permission to come say hi to me. Come say hi. Come say hi to us.
We would love it.
Come talk to us. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you don't like. But today we're going to go through what we like.
Yeah, and kind of we've been playing card games for a while now, and we both have our own systems on how we do it. Mostly it's winging it, but every now and then we take it seriously. And we're gonna go over kind of what we're doing and what we're going to do and how we have previously gotten ready for a big competitive event. So we're spending money to fly down. You want to do well. You want to get your money's worth. What kind of things are you doing to be able to prepare for that and to be able to get that sorted?
And we've been competitively playing cards for, I would say, nearly about 17 years-ish.
We took like a 4-year break in there somewhere before SWU. But
we didn't really take a break. That 4 years was just us trying a bunch of different card games.
Yeah, and going
we didn't play a lot of large-scale competitive events. We still play cards. I think we played a lot of competitive events, and we have done very well. We're consistent top places, consistent winners of some large events, and that was mainly in the Dragon Ball era, and we did do fairly well in Destiny, but that was more early days for us.
Before we kind of got competitive with it.
Yeah, but in Dragon Ball we played very competitively and did very well, so some of you may remember us from there if you see us in SWU. But we do have a repertoire under our belt of performing well and consistently top cutting, and we traveled to multiple different states, so it's good to do it again. It's very exciting.
It is. Traveling with a bunch of mates to a card game tournament, one of the best feelings you're going to have in your life.
It is. But you do need to be prepared for that tournament, especially if it's a large one like the planetary qualifiers.
Absolutely.
Is what this video is about.
Absolutely is. So we're going to start kind of, I think the easiest thing to do is start as far out and then work way closer and closer. And what we're doing is we're getting closer. And the biggest thing for me personally, as someone who thrives in a deck building space, is card knowledge.
Ooh,
right at the beginning, and we have a really good card knowledge because of it. We started right when the game began, when the first cards were revealed, and we've seen every single card revealed since then. And we've probably
show some off.
We've probably played every single card.
Yep. I'd confidently say that I've played at least every single card once.
I have not played a Zori.
I have played a Crag and Gore.
Oh.
In pre-release, I played a Crag and Gore against someone. Gotta love it.
Gotta love the Crag and Gore.
The Crag.
No set 3 Crag.
No set 3 Crag.
No shields.
No shields in set 3? What? You can't just drop a bombshell like that on me and move along? Well, we are gonna, and we're gonna talk about that stuff closer to release, because set 3, before we move on, because I think some people might mention it, set 3 spoiler season has begun, but as we said for set 2, we're going to condense it, and we're going to move through it and do it in one big episode, and we're going to cover off a lot of our thoughts and break it up maybe about mechanics and stuff, but today is all about tournaments, preparing.
We're probably going to have like 10 minutes at the beginning of each thing and be like, hey, new cards dropped, this is kind of what they're doing, awesome. Anyway, we're not going to go over each card individually.
We'll talk about the good cards, maybe quick fire through a couple of them. But
Plo Koon exists, anyway.
What? He sucks! I'm sorry, Plo. I really like
However,
Plo
to be
Koon.
super meta because Jedi's meta, and
Honestly,
then there's a bunch of buffs on him.
That would
and
make me so happy if we get a Wolf card that synergizes so well with this card and makes it work.
Yeah.
Or Wolf, all of your Plo Koon's counters being coordinated. Let's go. But that's a good showing off of card knowledge.
Yeah, exactly. So card knowledge is massive while deck building, and it's also massive while playing the game.
Yes.
And it's not just a situation where you need to know all the cards in the meta. Having card knowledge means that you're going to do better in the Swiss rounds in the beginning. Having a really wide knowledge of cards and a really wide knowledge of decks means that you can on the fly at a tournament sit down, someone puts down Finn, and you can go, okay, I got to be careful of Rose. I got to be careful of Maz. I got to be careful of
Riken. Get him out of here.
Right? Like you can sit down, and even in a deck that you very rarely play, you see the colors, you see what's going on, and you can kind of extrapolate what you need to be careful of and what you need to keep an eye out for.
It's incredibly important for threat assessment and pivoting your plays. And if you get good at this, it will just innately make you a better player. Full stop. Just having card knowledge, I can confidently say I remember pretty much every card in the game. And I get caught off guard every now and again, as do all people. Yeah. But I think, especially moving into a large-scale tournament, knowing the general gist of what people could have, or even sitting there in the moment and taking a minute to go, what kind of card could they have to screw me over right now? What would be the best card to have? You might not need to know exactly what it is, but if they have a removal like this in their hand, I'm screwed. And then you can opt to play around that. And the likelihood is if they do have a card like that, and even if you're remotely playing around it, even in a vague sense, you're still getting the upper hand because you're being prepared for the worst outcome. And that's going to assist you in the game. You're playing careful, you're playing safe, and sometimes it pays off to play risky, but I think James is right. Having that generic card knowledge, understanding of cards, and sitting there, especially in Swiss. You're not going to you can know every card in all the meta decks. Someone sits down against you, and you're like, what is this? And they're like, it's my funny little Lando aggro. Yeah. And then you lose, and you're like, I can't believe I lost to Lando.
Yeah. And those things happen when you focus too hard on meta decks and don't respect. And especially in SWU, it's true. You got to respect decks and understand that if someone sits down in front of you with a mono red Kylo Ren, you could get blown out turn 4. You gotta be prepared. Yeah. You can't just be like, oh, cool, free win. Yeah. Against almost anyone, but especially aggro decks a lot more than the mono decks. Someone's in front of me with a mono red Grand Inquisitor. I know that deck's been going around, so people kind of know about it. But that's terrifying.
Yeah, that's
you got to be prepared for that.
You need to be paying attention to. Again, it's this game, unlike any other card game I've ever played. There isn't just they're the meta decks, but in the previous games I've played, Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh, Dragon Ball, even Star Wars Destiny, there was 3 decks that you could play. And the likelihood is if you're playing those decks and you come up against a deck that's not that in Swiss, you win. You just win. Yeah. It's just that good. Not in SWU. Look at the top 8s for all of the recent large or small tournaments. The top 8 to top 16 is incredibly varied. You'd be lucky to find 3 of the same kind of deck in the top 16 in this game. Yeah. And that's true. And you need to be ready. You need to lock in and pay attention to when someone puts a deck down. Your biggest flaw, if you sit down against someone and go, easy win, that's your loss. Yeah. Served up on a silver platter for you because you've underestimated their deck and them as a player. And I think that leads into an important thing for me for preparedness. Try to maintain a level of sportsmanship, and most importantly, maintain a level of respect for yourself, the cards, and your opponent. Not in the sense of just sportsmanship, but in the sense of respecting the power that certain cards and certain decks may hold against you. If you sit down against a deck round 1 in Swiss versus the grand final, treat those games the same.
Yeah, absolutely. And just recently, a top 8 a Fennec Red top 8'd 1K tournament. And so it's those situations where if you've played the Fennec Red deck before, you can be like, okay, I can't understand. But if you haven't, Fennec's really scary because it's like, oh, by the way, any 1, 2, 3, or 4 drop, I could ambush in. You go, right, yeah, that's fine. I understand that. And you go, what's all the 1, 2, 3, and 4 drops again? And then they ambush in the
4 cost 4. Tap something down.
Then tap something down.
If you're like us, you'll be like, this card exists. When we first saw it, we were like, we missed this in spoiler season. It's a good card. And
as we're moving on to bigger and bigger tournaments, one of the biggest things is people forget. People forget all the time. Once we're in set 4 and we're going to Worlds in July or June next year,
there'll be so many cards people have forgotten about.
No one's gonna remember that
mono yellow harm deck that's also goofy.
Yeah. No one's going to remember, or maybe in set 4 it'll make a comeback, but no one's going to remember Wedge Antilles 5 costs from set 1.
And that's because people focus too much on the meta. They discount cards and they discount decks because they're too focused on the biggest threats. Be focused on your biggest threats and tech against them. But, especially in this game, when deck building, do not build to counter specific decks, build to counter strategies. We've said it a few times on this podcast, but if I'm building a deck, yes, I will keep Boba in mind. Yes, I'll keep Sabine in mind. Yes, I'll keep Han in mind. But I will also boil them down to what they are. Aggro decks, value decks, and control decks. How does my deck stand up against aggro? Well, it's got these stuff that can stop it. And universally, this will work against Sabine and Boba. How do I go against value decks? Well, I've got these cards to stifle it. Great. This works against yellow Han, red-blue Han. How do I match up against control? Well, I've got these cards to outpace my other control competitors if I'm playing a control deck, or that works against Kira, that works against Palpatine. And now I've got a good baseline, and if I'm worried about any specific cards like Boba's Armor or Darksaber, well, I can put 3 Confiscate in my sideboard because I know that I need to tech specifically against those cards, but over a broad majority, I've covered my bases. And that's how I deck build and prepare. I get more specific cases and save them for my sideboards, or even just the fringe cards that I would like to put in the deck but need a flex slot, and I mainly make sure my deck has answers to all 3.
Now, one of the big things is, as we're going forward, like, we're still quite far out from the tournament. The meta shifts constantly. Do not get bogged down in a meta that's old. Do not over-prepare for a meta that is old. Early on, even right now, you have a month and a half or so before we start getting these planetary qualifiers come through. Play lots of decks.
Yeah, play them all. Run them all through a gauntlet. Pick a bunch of decks you like, pick a bunch of decks you don't.
Get a bunch of friends, play a bunch of decks, play Hondo Blue, but also play
Han Blue.
Yeah, the Han Blue, but also throw out Fennec Red into there.
Han Weenies.
Throw Han Weenies into there.
Bosk.
Throw Bosk into there. Throw Lando into there, because card knowledge comes from playing cards as well.
Yeah.
So the more experience you have with more cards, the better you'll do. Having said that, as we get closer, it's time to start locking in.
Oh, yeah.
It's time to start actually understanding fully the deck you want to take. And now is when it gets a little bit tough, because it's not about finding the deck for your current meta. It's about predicting where the meta is going to end up.
Yeah.
So in set 1, it was a very interesting situation where a lot of aggro was beating a lot of control was beating a lot of the value, and a lot of the value was beating a lot of the aggro, and it kind of went around in a circle like that for a little bit. And it wasn't about predicting where we currently were, but when we went into those store showdowns, it was about working out where it was going.
Yeah.
And a lot of and for me, it went more towards the control side of things, and so I teched my deck for control, right? Because value was coming back around, and I knew people would start to play more control as we moved into it.
I played aggro.
But also we played a week apart,
yes.
Right? So there is that change even week to week.
We played a week apart, and in that week, you were playing Red Iden and another tournament had happened, another Store Showdown, Mono Blue Iden won. We had that discussion. Go check out the breakdown. We did a breakdown on it. James did an amazing video earlier this year. Go check it out. It's a breakdown of our Store Showdown season. But we had that discussion of, hey, this deck just came up. And we sat down for maybe like an hour or two after filming and we went through the pros and cons versus.
Yeah.
James played Mono Blue. And if you want to go find out how that went, we'll go check out the video. But that's the kind of processes that you need to do. And most importantly, do it with friends. Do it on forums. Join the Discord. Look out. Watch YouTube videos. Like, that's what we do. We watch videos, look at tournament breakdowns. We have friends who are interested in the numbers, and we're interested too, because it's interesting to see where that deck goes. And don't just look at the winner. Oh man, green, blue, Kira won. Let's go there. But the top 3 was also like red, yellow, Fennec, and then like a blue Bo-Katan deck. So why did they make it so high? So you need to be paying attention to that too, because there's the limiting factors of not only deck, but also player skill. And sometimes people can top cut with a deck, but they can limit that deck as a player. And if a deck like that gets in the hands of a good player, it can win, it can wreak havoc, and you won't be prepared for it because you're too busy focusing on how to counter Boba Yellow that you didn't even think about Bo-Katan.
Absolutely. And you're playing a lot of different decks leading up to it, and you're starting to narrow down. And for me, it's narrowing it down to what deck I'm enjoying.
Yeah.
I think is one of the key things that we like to talk about and we like to say. I think one of the biggest reasons why Iden was my pick for the previous showdown was because I enjoyed that deck. And I know that's controversial, and you go, I can't believe you enjoyed playing Iden Control, you
Some people like Control.
bastard.
It's true.
That's what they sound like.
That's what they all sound like.
Yeah, that's what they all sound like. But that's because I enjoyed playing that style of deck. I liked playing that more controlled deck. Control has fallen off in set 2, in my opinion, quite a bit.
It has. It's moved into more of a value-oriented.
Absolutely. And I think that has fallen off in my personal playstyle. I need to find what works for me. And one of the reasons why we talk about the Blue Hondo deck a lot is because both of us vibe with that deck in a way that we just enjoy playing it.
Yeah.
And while we accept that it has its weaknesses, it has its bad matchups, if it's a deck that we enjoy playing, then we can do what we need to do with it, and that's play it a lot.
Yep.
I don't care whether you're taking it to locals every week, whether you're running 1,000 games on Karabast, or whether you're playing TTS with your mates every single night, checking every matchup.
I know we do.
Absolutely do. It's about learning that deck and every single line that it has back to front. So in any situation, you know all of your options. Exactly. How many times have you played a deck, and then after you've finished playing a game, and maybe you've won, maybe you've lost, you go, oh, actually, I could have done that.
I was playing a game against one of our friends at locals, hello Looney, and he was playing Money the Boba, and we played a few games. I was playing Blue Hondo against him, and he was, I believe, my only loss for that night. And we played a game, and it was, we played a few games before that, and I won, and we went into the tournament, and I had played a card, and as soon as I played that card, I went, I've lost. And he looked at me and went, oh, how? And then I was like, I'll tell you afterwards. And then we played the game, we finished off, and I lost the game. And then when we sat down, he was like, okay, I'm really interested, like genuinely interested. How did you come to this conclusion? And I went, here's how. And I was able to explain that because I didn't play a 3-cost smuggle ship and buff up an Inferno 4 and then ambush in a Pike Sentinel, I wasn't able to get control in both lanes, which my deck desperately needed in that matchup. And that's the kind, he was like, oh, that's really interesting. And that's the kind of knowledge that once you play that, I could probably name my Hondo deck list without seeing it right now. And that's the kind of knowledge that you should have once you've found that deck. And this isn't a rigorous, you should know this, blah, blah, blah. I know this because this is a deck I love. This is a deck that I took the list for. I've put my pieces into it. I've constructed it. And the reason I know it front and back, and the reason I know when I make plays like that, I'm able to recognize where I went wrong to improve, which is a great thing. We are but the sum of our parts and the sum of our mistakes. Is because I took that deck and I made it my own. And I know everything about that. I know the plays I can make. I know the plays my opponents can make. And that comes from card knowledge and deck knowledge.
Absolutely. And it's so much harder to run a deck to that level of knowledge when you aren't enjoying it.
Yeah.
It really is. It is an extreme slog to be able to get a deck you do not enjoy playing to a point of level where you need to play it. I
think we were having a discussion with, I was having a discussion with one of the guys we're going to Melbourne with, the one who sold me the Honda Shonda. And we were having a discussion. He's been playing Han Blue a lot. And I messaged him the other night when I booked my tickets, and he went, I don't know if I want to play Han Blue. And I went, that's very interesting to me. And the reason is because he's been practicing with that a lot with one of our other very good friends, and they meticulously whittled down to what they thought was a very good version. And when I asked him why, his response was, it makes me tired, and I get stressed when I play it, because I feel like I'm constantly on the back foot with that deck, and it's a deck that I have to play out of my mind with. And keep in mind, this boy's a very good player. Like, he's one of the best players we've got.
That's not stroke his ego.
Wow. He doesn't watch us. But he's one of the best players we've got. And it's important as a good player to know your limits and recognize that. So it's not that he's like, I got to play out of my mind because I'm bad. It's I got to play out of my mind because this deck doesn't suit me as a player, and maybe I need to reevaluate which deck I want to bring, because I don't want to put mental exhaustion on myself and give my opponent the edge. Because if I'm stressing so much about what's in my deck and not thinking about enough what's in their deck, I get surprised. If I'm stressing too much about what's in their deck and not focusing on mine, again, I get put on the back foot because I'm not assessing my options.
You're not playing optimally. And that's exactly why you played Sabine in the Store Showdown, funnily enough. It was one of those things where you were trying to find a deck, and couldn't lock down a deck for it, and went, well, I'm just going to play Sabine because I know Sabine back to front.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, if I'm not going to be like super stressed about it. And look where it landed you.
Yeah, we talked so much about it because I couldn't find a deck that I liked. I even played Ivan Control. It frustrated the hell out of me. But I then went, I just am going to accept. To me, Sabine set one, maybe even now. Sorry to all of you people out there who love it. It's a good deck. It's a lot of fun. It's an autopilot deck. It's got its linear plays, and you can make flex plays. And that's, to me, what it makes a really good player, is being able to think on the dime and playing a linear deck with more options. But that's what I did. I was like, this is a linear deck. Other people are going to bring it. And if I can outplay them and out-aggro them and then out-aggro the control, which I know I can beat with this, I'm going to have a fine time. Yep. And if I don't, then I don't mind too much because I'm not having to stress. I'm not having to sit there and think and play out of my mind.
Yeah.
And that's like that's the boon of aggro, is you can go into it, and a lot of the time, win or lose, you're going to come out feeling refreshed and pretty happy. And that's exactly what happened to Sabine. But that's where the bane of other archetypes come in as well, like Control. Control is an archetype, and you had this discussion with me as well, where you won that tournament, let's go, absolute W, but there were some games where you were like, I've got this on lockdown because of these reasons, I've assessed my options, it's really good. And there were other games where you had to play out of your mind because that was the kind of scenario you were in. And I think that's the double-edged sword of a lot of control decks and things like that. And I think that's how the meta in this game is progressing, where even Sabine now is a bit, with so many new cards, is a bit more flexible. And I think that's one big thing, is you were able to get through that because you enjoyed the deck.
Absolutely. And I will not state this enough. I had some wild matches in that game, and I came out of that tired, but rewarded. Like I felt good. I felt good going into the top cut. I felt good going into the final match. At no point did I sit down, and I had games that were, I finished, immediately went to the next one, finished, immediately went to the next one, because I was playing that kind of slower deck. And At no point was I like, I'm just so tired. I need a break.
Yeah.
Right. I was locked in.
Buzz.
I was ready, and I was energized and like focused the entire time.
Yeah.
Which, if I didn't enjoy Iden, I wouldn't have.
You would just be stressing, right?
I would not even like I was stressing. Like everyone stresses. You're gonna stress when you go to these big tournaments. You're gonna make mistakes. You're gonna lose games. It was a case where you're gonna stress, but you're not constantly in a state of, I should have done this, or I could have done this. You either go, I played my best and I lost, or I played my best and I won.
Yeah, exactly. You're not spiraling, and I think that's important. Like when I played Sabine, I sat down and I didn't even think about the finals. I just got to win this one, and if I don't, that's fine. If I win this one and make it to the next one, then I'll focus on the next one when I go to it. And that might not work for all decks, but it worked a lot with Sabine. I won that event, and it's because I was able to focus on the game at that point, because my deck allowed me to. It was a deck that didn't require much from me, and because of that, I was able to outplay people. And I think that my opponents were incredibly good at the game, and I think that I am still proud in saying that I think I really did a good job piloting that deck.
Yeah.
And I think that was the day that proved to me that I was like, okay, well, I must be pretty good at SWU then. And I feel more qualified to have this podcast now. Like, not anything like toot my own horn, but just because I played a deck that I was comfortable with, I was in my element.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what you got to find. And if you're worried because you haven't been able to find that, if you're worried because you're still searching for that, don't be worried. I went through it as well when going into Squadron Showdowns. I played Red Iden for only maybe a week or two before that.
Yeah.
And because I was lost. He can tell you I was lost. I was playing decks. I was losing locals. I could not get a grip on what was happening.
We'd like play a couple of games, and I'd probably get scrub stomped, and then it would be like, oh, this is good, because we would either be, he played against Sabine, and it would just be it would just be a swap. Yeah. That deck would be gone, and we'd be like, okay, well, that was not even close. Let's move on to the next one.
Yeah.
And then I would get pub stomped, and I'd be like, okay, maybe we're onto something here. And you'd bring it to locals, and then Roy McGee with his IG88 deck would just take you out, and you'd be like, how is this happening?
It was a lot of that. And I didn't lock that. I was like, all right, lock in Red Iden for that first Store Champs. And I was like, I'm going to play this until I win. And then immediately it was, actually, there's different ways to do this.
Yeah.
And there was the luxury of having multiple Store Showdowns to go to. Planetaries, we don't have that luxury. And while you have a lot of wiggle room to change and to have multiple decks that you're playing and you know really well. And sometimes it's even the day before that you decide to fully lock in what deck you're playing.
Yeah.
And that's fine. That happens. But as we're moving into a bigger event, there's more stuff to prepare for. And one of the biggest things is making sure that, especially if you're traveling to an event, and I know a lot of people are going to be traveling to events. I think there's probably maybe 15 planetaries in the US.
Oof.
I want to say
52 states, 15 PQs.
I think it's 15 or 20 or something like that. It's not a lot. There's one in Australia, which includes New Zealand.
That's all of Oceania. It includes New Zealand. Wow, we'll see you there, folks of Lord of the Rings.
And I haven't seen any knowledge on what's happening in Europe and how many they're getting.
That would be interesting. But
so there's not a lot of them going around, and that's because it's season 1. We knew this would happen. We were aware of this as of a few weeks ago. That season 1 was going to be very, very low key, very, very underground.
Just kind of like, if you know, you know, you know.
Yeah. Just us cool kids. No, but if you're traveling to an event, there are things of, hey, make sure you're well rested. Make sure you're getting there and you're getting the sleep that you need. Make sure as you're leading up, you're doing a lot of testing, you're doing a lot of preparation, but looking after yourself, you know. Don't want anyone fainting on us at a store showdown.
Exactly. There is a luxury to PQs versus store showdowns, though. Store showdowns, a lot of the time, you find out like 2 weeks beforehand. And you're like, okay, well, we know that this is the general season they're going to happen in, and then stores will just be like, by the way, guys, next week I've got a store showdown. And you're like, okay, well, I've been practicing for this, it's fine, not a lot of pressure. If you haven't found your deck, good news. Your PQ is probably like in 2 months. You have 2 months to test. And if you haven't found your deck yet, do exactly what we said before. Play. Get your friends together, get your mates together. Go on Caravan, go on Discord, go on TS, go to your locals, and ask people to stay back. Ask people to play a couple more games.
Yep.
And just prepare. Play. Find what you like. Find what you love, because it is out there. There is a meta deck for everyone in the meta. I firmly believe that. There's a terrible deck you can play that's not in the meta, and you might love that too. But everyone has 2 decks. They're funny little meme garbage deck they love, and there will always be a meta deck that you can play, and you just need
Inside you is 2 decks.
And they're fighting for dominance. And when it's PQ season, meta wins, baby.
Hell yeah. So, you've prepared your deck.
Uh-huh.
You've got your deck locked in.
Oh, yeah. I love my deck.
We're going to talk a little bit about that funny little 10 cards.
Mm-hmm. That sideboard.
Sideboard. So,
where the colors cards belong?
Sideboard is an extremely interesting concept in card games.
Yep.
We're aware, when it got announced that there was a sideboard for SWU, everyone was like, oh my god, sideboard.
The cancel culture of card games, the sideboard.
And there's a reason why, and a lot of people have different views on what your sideboard is for. Mm-hmm. And there's a couple schools of thought. One school of thought is your sideboard is for silver bullets. And by silver bullets, I mean very niche cards that affect individual matchups.
Do you like Confiscate? Do you like Resupply in set 1? Well, those are your silver bullet cards. If I'm coming up against Iden in set 1, I put Resupply in my deck, and I put that specifically for that deck. If I am coming up against Boba and Sabine in set 2, you better believe that 3 of my slots are locked in for Confiscate. That's no joke. Mm-hmm. That's genuinely real. I'm a person whose school of thought is silver bullets all the way, baby, because I gear my decks to face many things. They're all-wheel drive, baby.
And that's a very interesting way of doing it. And so you kind of build your deck in a more generic sense, and then you use the sideboard for individual matchups. So for this, and it can usually be for aggro, I'll put in these cards. For control, I'll put in these cards. And for value, I'll put in these cards and take it. And you'll kind of have general ideas of what to swap out, what to put in for each kind of archetype.
Yeah.
The other school of thought is more of a risk in a way, but can pay off really highly if you're very, very aware of the meta.
Spicy one-offs.
No. So the big thing is building your deck to combat a very specific section of the meta that you believe is going to be very prevalent in the tournament. And then, so essentially, in essence, you're taking the same thing as the first option, but already siding in for one of those matchups.
Control is usually the people who play control decks have this school of thought. Because a lot of the time, as we discussed earlier, control does have a lot of games where it can safely be like, I'm all good, especially if you're a really good player. And then if you're an exceptional player, you will know that this deck really gets me. So I'll put my sideboard completely to defeat this deck.
Yeah. So I particularly sideboarded, had main decked very heavily towards control. So any control deck I came across, I was already teched to beat. So I'd usually win game 1. On those long, slow control games, winning game 1 made your opponent panic. Because if they win game 2, are they going to have time to win game 3? And that's a really good way to actually psych out your opponent and have the ability and have them make mistakes. It's one of those situations where, for me personally, that's how I built my sideboard in set 1. And it was to create situations that benefited me. And I had a lot more to side out against those aggro matchups. Mm-hmm. And maybe they'd take game 1, but with those aggro matchups, I'm not worried about going to time at all. Yeah. So I sided in all the things that I needed to and coasted my way through the other games.
It's one of those things where you can gear your deck towards it, and 60% of the time, your control deck is probably going to be aggro. and then for the 40% of that time where they take game one, you side in all of the pieces to completely destroy them, and then for the next 2 games you win.
Yeah.
And that's the theory behind it, is you go, this is my deck, these are all the really good cards for it and the general stuff. Awesome. I'm going to main deck and gear towards countering control, and then because my deck can handle aggro really well anyway, I'm just going to put in the other stuff I will need in case they win.
Yeah, absolutely. And in this situation, in this situation, a thing of that would be, I'm going to main deck 3 confiscate. Excuse me.
I love confiscate.
That would be the situation, right? He's putting it in his side deck, so if he puts it in against Boba and Sabine, I say I'm going to see so much Boba and Sabine in this tournament that I want that game 1 advantage against them, because I'm guessing that is going to be my most prevalent matchup.
Yeah, that's fair.
And it's a different way of thinking about it. That both are extremely valid and both work in their own respects, and it is pure personal preference on how you want to go about that. Obviously, a section of my sideboard, usually 2 to 3 cards, is always reserved for spicy one-offs. Spicy one-offs are a way of life, and they are some of the funnest stuff that you'll ever see when you place it down and they go, what?
I think my biggest piece of advice for people on this, as someone who does not like one-offs, be restrained. I see so many people who build their decks with like 5 to 6 one-offs. And
if you have one-offs in your main deck, unless it's Final Gambit, which is hilarious, don't.
It is a huge consistency bump, and I'm not like, this isn't me being like, you're stupid for doing that. It's just because it's a consistency debump, and those cards, you're running them as one because of so niche specific situations. Just put them in your side deck. If you like, this card is a really good one of, if I come up against this deck, dedicate a slot to your side deck. There is one of in my Hondo deck, and it's Collect Evidence, and it's the 3 cost that steals an upgrade, and that is the only one I've got. And in my sideboard, I'm going to have probably 2 or more of them, or maybe even just completely swap it out for Confiscate, depending on how the meta goes with Sabine and Darksaber. But I don't have any other one-offs, because I want consistency, because I know in my matchups that I need to see at least one of these cards in the game, and I want to bump that up. And it's fine to have 1 or 2 spicy one-offs in the main deck, but I do believe that mainly those spicy one-offs belong in the sideboard, and those cards are going to be cards where you have outplayed the whole meta, and just when you put that card down, your opponent's going to go, didn't even think about this, now I can't win.
Absolutely. And now comes to a point that is very near and dear to my heart, and very, very me-centric, and is calling out myself as the kind of player I am, and that is talking about spicy counter-meta decks.
Oh my.
At the end of the day, you might find a build that consistently beats most of the meta. And well done. Good job. You've found it.
Naysayers beware. Yellow heart exists.
It could be a fact where if everyone knew about that deck, they could tech against it pretty easily.
Yeah.
But they don't. And so they can't.
This happened to me in set 1 in our store showdown when I brought yellow blue Chirrut. Yeah, people could just run cards to kill Chirrut. But no one did, because no one thought about Chirrut. And I made it to the top 8, and then I had to go. But I was fairly confident I could win that event.
Hey, did you say you were going to build Chirrut after last week's episode?
I did. I got very excited. But then we talked about that Han Weenies deck that someone played against you at Locals, and I was like, ooh.
Fair enough.
Go check out gameplay.
But yeah, if you bring Chirrut, people probably going to surprise some people, and you're going to get some wins.
Mr. Imwe.
Now, the biggest thing about decks like these is it's really tough. Unless you have a play group that tests really heavily, it's really hard to get a lot of testing done with it without releasing it to the world. And a lot of the time you can get away with it, but if people catch on and then it starts to become big, you're like, no, my deck! And that's fair. It happens. But the biggest thing, as someone who has done this constantly, as someone who did this and managed to top 8 a national in Dragon Ball with a deck no one had used elements of decks people had seen but hadn't really seen before. It is the best feeling in the world. It is incredible when your spicy little tech deck is actually the best deck and counters the meta and does a really good job of it, there's a lot of tournaments I've scrubbed out of.
Yep.
There is a lot of tournaments that my deck has just gone.
There are a lot of tournaments that we've scrubbed out.
So if you, yes, bringing the meta, the most concise thing is find a meta deck that is stapled in the meta and take that. I'm never going to advocate purely because I'm that guy. I'm always going to be that guy. I'm going to be that guy that scrubs out of 4 tournaments because he's like, no, guys, please, Finn really works. I played it once in this gameplay last week and I won with it, and now it's really good, I promise. At the end of the day, sometimes you hit gold and it's the best feeling in the world, but with that risk, you have to accept the risk that you're going to scrub out a lot.
Or you can be an insane person like I was when I played Dragon Ball and I came 9th in like a 150 player event by playing the demo green leader Goku that had no abilities on him, but double strike. And you can be that kind of player, but you need to go into that tournament, not how I did, and just know that you're probably going to lose. And that's okay. If
you bring Lando to planetary qualifiers, I love you. Yep. I absolutely love you. I love you in your last place trophy.
I think don't bank to win, but bank to be the guy that said, I brought Lando.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to win. Like, it sounds really crappy, unless you've made an amazing deck and you could win.
Exactly. Like, there is that possibility, and if you're excited about it, be excited
about it. 100%. But there's like a likelihood that a lot of the time, don't overestimate that. You can be the best player in the world, and you definitely could win. There is always a chance, but don't go into it being like, I'm guaranteed a victory. And if you do lose and you come play last place with your trophy, be the guy who's proud to have brought Lando to the PQ.
And I think one of the biggest things about it is it comes back to that thing of what's going to happen. And my answer is always the same to this. If I said, I'm not going to do anything, I'm going to play Boba Yellow, and I'm only going to play Boba Yellow, and I take Boba Yellow to a pro quest, and I lose and I scrub out with Boba Yellow, I'm going to be insufferable to my friends and not to my opponents, because never be insufferable to your opponents. I'm going to be really sad, and I'm going to be like, why did I even come to this thing? Why did I play Boba Yellow? I don't really like playing Boba Yellow that much. But if I bring my really spicy deck that I really like and I scrub out, I'm going to go, well, I had fun. I played my cool spicy deck, but I just didn't get
Then you're going to go to the side event with your best friend and swap decks and win a $200 card. It's just that simple.
It's just that simple.
That's what we did.
But at the end, that's the payoff, right? So you can choose between those, and both are fully valid in what they do. I am usually always going to go with the side of, I'm going to play my deck and I'll see what happens, over I'm going to force a meta deck, and if I fail with it, I'm just going to be like, why did I even do this in the first place?
Yes. And I think I completely agree with that. Can you say Boba Yellow one more time?
Boba Yellow?
And I think that editing James is going to see me when he's editing this do that every time.
Oh no, I saw. I'm looking at the
Bro,
screen with us.
I'm
going to spoil it for the spoilers. There's a screen here where we can see ourselves.
Is that me?
It is.
One thing that I will say about competitive large-scale tournaments is be like me when I first started cards and how I am now. Don't be like me when I got into playing cards competitively. If you know me, I was a fairly notoriously salty little boy. When I first started playing Star Wars Destiny, I had an incredibly good time. I went to a major event and I brought Dooku Grievous. And I bought Dooku Grievous because I love Count Dooku. And get this, I love General Grievous. So I built that deck. I played that as my first Star Wars Destiny deck. I enjoyed it. And it was a deck that I can confidently say when I was a young teenage boy, I went consistently 2-2 with, and I think that's pretty good. We scrubbed out of the main event. James and I swapped decks in the side event, and we had a blast.
Yeah.
I started playing Dragon Ball, and I enjoyed that game, loved it, but I did take it a bit too seriously, and when I think my biggest problem was, when I played in Dragon Ball, I made one fatal error that we talked about earlier. I didn't play a meta deck, and I expected to win. I was a good player. I am a good player. But there is something to be said about a deck will innately hold back a good player. And you will hit a cap with that. And I did it twice at 2 large events. And I nearly topped both times with those decks, and I was outraged. Rather than looking back on it now, fairly proud that I took 2 frankly terrible decks and did as well as I did. And I don't feel like that anymore. I have my fair share of every now and again getting frustrated, as I'm sure we all do. But
absolutely.
I think it's important to remember as well. Don't be insufferable to your opponent, and don't do that to yourself.
Yeah.
Because that will take a mental tax on you, and it will make you play worse. You'll get so frustrated thinking about last game that you'll make a mistake during this game. And suddenly, your opponent who's so excited for the PQ is sitting next to you, who's probably lost 3 games as well, but is having a good time, might not, because you've lost 3 games and you're being kind of an ass. So I think it's important to remember that all leads back to play a deck you're comfortable with and have realistic expectations of a tournament going in. And
Absolutely.
if you lose one game, don't let it affect you. Move on. I've seen people submarine to the top and win the tournament.
Easily done. At the end of the day, there's a reason why there's a top cut.
Yeah.
There is a top cut because the person who goes undefeated in Swiss is not necessarily the best player there. It's why we have a top cut.
Yeah.
If you lose a game, if you lose 2 games in some larger tournaments, if you win 3 games in the really big tournaments, you can still get into that top cut and make it into the next day or the finals of that week.
Absolutely.
And still win. Do not one loss does not cut you out, and do not get discouraged by it and lose the rest of your games because you absolutely are in your own head.
Don't be your own worst enemy.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the biggest learning point, and for me, a biggest takeaway from playing Dragon Ball was I loved it. I loved the competitive stuff, and I love competitive stuff now. But don't get in your head and don't become your own worst enemy, because it will cause you to lose, and it'll cause it to bring the vibe of the whole event down. Do what I did in Destiny. I might have won a couple games, I might have lost a couple games. But if you lose and you're like, oh, that was so frustrating, shake your opponent's hand, say good game, go outside, have some lunch, come back, and you know what FFG is great at? Side events. Go blitz a draft.
Yeah.
Go have fun and win some cards.
Go play some Twin Suns.
There's not been an FFG event that we've been at that didn't have side events that had, frankly, wild prizing. You could win just straight up legendaries. Yeah. You could, I wouldn't be surprised if we go there and there'll be a side event where you can just win a place at a pose. Literally no joke. When we played, you won a $200 card. It was a double dice Mace Windu. And at that point, he was super expensive. And that was just a side event. That was like $20 entry. So if you lose the main event, you know what? Learning experience for next time. Go play a side event. And one good thing about this season 1 of PQs, you get an invite to Worlds. You get an invite to Worlds anyway. If you want to go to Worlds and you lose, you come last in this PQ, well, guess what? The first Worlds next year is open to everyone.
So you can just go anywhere.
Take this opportunity to practice. If this is your first card game, be excited and just have fun. If this is a card game that, you take seriously, go to it. Take it seriously, but have fun too. And rest assured that in the knowledge of this competitive season, for year 1 and 2 of Star Wars Unlimited, you don't have to put that much pressure on yourself.
Now, it is the day of the event.
Oh my god, it is?
It's the day of the event. You're ready. You've got your Spy Squadron playmat. They don't exist, unfortunately.
Don't exist yet. Maybe. Who knows? We do.
You have your deck. It's sleeved in brand new Spy Squadron sleeves. They also don't exist.
Yeah. Maybe. Who knows?
And
you got a Spy Squadron shirt on.
You got it all. You're ready to go.
Lunchbox.
Where's your first stop?
Breakfast.
Yes. Where's your second stop?
The toilet.
Sure. Third stop?
Registration?
No. One of the biggest things about these events, and especially planetary qualifiers, which is not a 2-day event, I know our planetary qualifiers, the timeline for it is 10 a.m. in the morning to 11:30 p.m.
Classic. We haven't done that in a while. That's going to be fun.
Go to the supermarket, get some muesli bars, get some snacks,
Back it up, baby.
get some water. And I know this sounds silly. I know it sounds like,
no, I
don't need that.
You gotta pack a lunch.
You're gonna faint. You're not gonna faint, but you're
You're
gonna be in round 7 with 1 loss going, if I lose, I'm not in top cart, and your brain is gonna go,
You will severely underestimate the amount of time you'll get for lunch. Like, genuinely. You'll play a game, play around, and then other people who are playing aggro decks or who are just happy to lose are going to go, they're going to have lunch, they're going to have a great time. You'd be doing really well. You'd be having a good time. You'd be keeping your spirits up. Brother, pack some snacks, pack some energy drinks, make sure you get the good stuff, make sure you pack some water, but like, you will need it because there isn't as much time as you think between rounds.
And being able to get a snack in, actually keeping your energy up, keeping your sugar up, is genuinely an important part of getting through
Stop you from being
a card game tournament this large.
Yeah, it'll stop you from being grumpy. It'll help you think straight. Like, it's important to have, like, I know when I do these events, I always have a huge breakfast, and then I will, like, usually get some snacks. And I think always bring water.
Oh, absolutely.
Bring
water. No, bring water. What am I? I'm not.
No, you should, because we've been to places where they've been like large regional events, and they haven't had vending machines, and the nearest supermarket is like 30 minutes away. So I'm in like round 8 doing well and just going, I wish I had a glass of water right now.
How many times have we been like, hey, like one of our friends has come over to us, like, watch our game, and we're still going, we're like, hey man, if you could duck out and grab a bottle of water for me.
All the time.
Please.
I'd like the amount of times that like we were playing Dragon Ball, one of us would just give each other a card, middle of like a really intense game, be like Coca-Cola, and then just someone like we'd just be like, all right, and we'd lock in, go back, like come back with it. It's it is stuff, and like again, some of the more fond memories of the events, but you gotta like genuinely pack a lunch in your Spice Squadron branded lunchbox. That's good. How about that, huh? It's shaped like Spice, our droid. Baba Booey.
Baba Booey. Also, go with friends.
Oh my god. If you're not going to an event with friends, you are missing out.
There's something to be said for that moment, and every card game player knows this, because every card game player has friends, and they go with friend groups. Every card player knows this feeling of the between round huddle.
Oh my god, I love the little debrief.
The debrief every single round of how'd you go? How'd you go? I won. You win? Yeah, we won!
And then someone walks up like, I lost. And you all grieve together.
What happened? What'd you play? And they go, Bobby Yellow. And you go, fuck. What happened?
Always next round.
Yeah, next round, man. Next round. It keeps your spirits up. It keeps your energy up. There's no better feeling than winning. There's no better feeling of winning with your friends around you cheering you on.
Losing sucks. Losing with your friends around doesn't suck that much.
Doesn't suck as bad. And they keep you humble. They keep you happy. And I wouldn't want to fly down to Melbourne without anyone to be there with me.
There was a time where I was maybe not going to this PQ, and James was like, oh, that's upsetting. And then I went, let me check flight costs. That's cheap. I'm going into PQ. I'd squeeze it in. I think like ultimately there was a part of me that was like, oh, maybe I can't make it. But I knew I was always going to come. And I think that I have no fonder memories of other than going to card game tournaments with my friends. I will never forget being in the airport in Brisbane, opening up a Kylo starter deck that I got my friend to buy me before we went to the tournament so I could build a deck. I will never forget flying to Adelaide and hanging out with my friends in our very close to neighbours small apartment. It's just, it might just be a weekend, but it's a weekend ultimately with your friends doing something that you love, something that you are passionate about. Because Lord, oh Lord, you better believe we here at the Spice Squadron, if you haven't guessed it yet, are bloody passionate about Star Wars Unlimited.
Funnily enough, we are. And not gonna lie, we may have taken over a hotel. I don't know how many rooms this hotel has.
So I'm pretty sure there's about 7 or 8 of us going.
and all staying at this one hotel. So we may, you may hear about us in the news.
Spicing it up.
Spicing it up.
Squadron and our stuff. You really.
But you can bet that if you guys want to know how we're preparing, what we're doing, if you guys want a really cool video that comes out way after it that is in a similar vein to the previous cool video that I put out way after a big tournament, hit that subscribe button, hey.
Hit subscribe, hit like, comment. We're
going to be talking about a lot of stuff moving forward. We're going to be talking about meta decks. We're going to be talking about meta text. We're going to be talking about tech.
Tech the card.
The card, tech the being. We're going to be watching Tech Live, Tech Reacts.
We're going to be covering off spoilers, new sets, and we're shifting the channel to still cover off spoilers and stuff, but more to gear towards the content that you guys want to see. Meta coverage, preparedness for tournaments, the stuff that's really done well and that we want to provide you. We like when videos do well because it gives us an idea of what you want to watch, because we want to make content not just for us, but we want to make content for you. We love talking about this game no matter the topic. And if you have a specific topic you like, well, we'll talk about it.
And if you guys want to see something, let us know. Comment down below if you'd like to see a stream of our of us doing some testing for this upcoming planetary qualifiers.
I think that'd be heaps of fun.
I think we can have us playing games, but also we have some friends that we might be able to join us and show kind of how we start doing it and how we prepare for games. If you guys want to see that kind of content, let us know, because there's a lot of stuff we can do. We just need to know whether you want to see it.
And I think the main reason is we want to see some channel growth, because we've been doing this for a year now, and firstly we didn't even expect to be this big, and it's so exciting. And now we're really enjoying it. We're getting ambitious. We have some stuff in the work in the background that we really want to do, and like we've been talking about, and maybe even hinted in this video. Who knows? But we want to be able to reach a wider audience, because we love making content for you guys, and we want more people to see that content. We want this game to get bigger, and at the end of the day, we just want to make more videos for more people to enjoy and grow this community. We've seen a huge growth, and this is still a card game in its infancy, and we want to be one of the driving people. So we have set a goal. We want to try to hit 500 subscribers
by the end of the year. If we don't, that's okay. We love where we are. We're not going to stop making content. No. This isn't a barrier. No. There's no.
It's just a neat little goal that if we reach it, it will motivate us to do some more stuff, like potentially looking at mats.
So if you're watching this and you're not subscribed and you enjoyed the content, obviously you have it because you're stuck around this long. Please subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. That's all for today. Check out the gameplay. It's going to be an interesting one.
It's red green v red green.
Ooh. And we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.